Is consciousness a part of this universe? What up, everybody? Esoteric Eddie here. Namaste. Today, we're going to be going over 4 different articles on consciousness and going over some recent research on consciousness and conclusions about it within the scientific community. So kick back, relax, enjoy the show. Hope everybody's been doing good. And this is a topic that I love. And this is the topic that my last book, The Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion, was all about. I love the topic of consciousness, subconscious, psychology, the universe, all that kind of stuff, the quantum realm. It's fascinating. So yeah, we're going to be going over 4 articles, all having to do with consciousness and different questions about it, different aspects about it. But we're going to start with this debate, this 25-year-long debate that was officially ended between 2 scientists on consciousness. And so let's get this rolling. I'm going to share my screen here. Bam. Okay. So consciousness, man, is it real? I mean, obviously it's real, right? But what is it? So in this first article titled "A 25-Year-Old Bet About Consciousness Has Finally Been Settled," we're going to dive into the beginning of our article journey. And per usual, I read through all the articles and highlighted the most important aspects for us, and I'll just be reading those and chiming in with some commentary. All right, so a neuroscientist and a philosopher were to settle a bet made in the late 1990s on one of science's biggest questions. How does a brain, a lump of matter, generate subjective conscious states such as the blend of anticipation and nostalgia, as this reader felt while he was watching these guys? And so the reader here was speaking about a debate between a neuroscientist and a philosopher that took place back in the 90s, as we'll see, about consciousness. And he was there watching it in the beginning back in the 90s, and he was there 25 years later to see the results of the bet on consciousness. So he says here, first, Christoph Koch, or Koch, the neuroscientist, and David Chalmers, the philosopher, butt heads in 1994 at a now legendary conference in Tucson, Arizona, called Toward a Scientific Basis for Consciousness. Now, real quick, I wrote a little bit about David Chalmers in my Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion book. He's a famous philosopher on consciousness, and he famously coined the term the hard problem. And so, if you've done any amount of research on consciousness within the quantum physicist field or whatever scientific field, you'll quickly run into that name, David Chalmers, and the term the hard problem, in which he famously coined. And the hard problem is explaining why consciousness exists and why consciousness is so unique. We can look at the brain and say, oh yeah, look, here's the part that deals with hearing or whatever. We can determine all of these different parts of the brain that react to certain stimuli, but we can't explain the hard problem, which is why there's consciousness and why it is so unique. But anyway, so Koch, together with biophysicist Francis Crick, had been proclaiming that consciousness was scientifically tractable. So they were reductionists, saying that it all comes from the brain, from matter. Chalmers argued that neither any other strictly physical process could account for why perceptions are accompanied by conscious sensations. So he was, I guess, the opposite of a reductionist, a non-localist, claiming that it is not the brain or matter that produces consciousness, but probably the other way around, or at the very least, that consciousness and matter cooperate together. Chalmers suggested that the hard problem might be solved by assuming that information is a fundamental property of reality, This hypothesis could account for consciousness in any system, not just one with a brain. Now, as we'll see later, this kind of gets into the idea of AI possibly being conscious. And I've said through my book and through various podcasts and stuff that the mainstream definition of consciousness and explanation for consciousness by default would allow AI to form a consciousness eventually, because the mainstream theories on consciousness basically all summarize to the conclusion that consciousness is just an illusion of all the perceptions and sensory um, parts of the system working in conjunction, working at the same time, which produce a false sense of a 360 experience and self. And so, by that definition, eventually AI could become conscious. But we inherently know that that definition is not the true definition. That is a rudimentary explanation for basically how lower thinking orders within the biological systems operate, or how simple, robotic information systems operate. But it could be the recipe for consciousness. It could be the receiver. If it becomes powerful enough, it might actually be able to receive a consciousness, just as our brains did at one point. All right, so there's David Chalmers on the left, looking like a mixture between David Icke and Roger Waters, and then Christopher or whatever Koch. This guy looks more heady than Chalmers. It's interesting. All right. Unimpressed, Koch confronted Chalmers at a cocktail reception and denounced his information hypothesis as untestable and hence pointless. Why don't you just say that when you have a brain, the Holy Ghost comes down and makes you conscious? Damn, snap. The scientific community going neck for neck, man. Taking shots. That's hilarious. Like thinking about him doing that, like just going up there. Your theory on consciousness is whack, boy. Chalmers replied coolly that the Holy Ghost hypothesis conflicted with his own subjective experience. Just like, nah, bro, that's pretty whack of you to say. Their views hadn't changed much when they made their wager in 1998. Koch bet Chalmers a case of wine that within 25 years, that is by 2023, the prophecy has been fulfilled. Researchers would discover a clear neural pattern underlying consciousness. So the bet was, man, within the next 25 years, we're going to put an end to this whole hippie heady thing about consciousness. It's all in the brain, buddy. It's so funny how like these reductionists are so quick to say that, like, all right, so you're just saying you're nothing than just a flaccid brain. That's all you are. I'm just talking to some brain with some illusory 360 experience. That's whack, man. Ah, man. All right. So Koch's position shifted dramatically as he embraced an ambitious information based model invented by neuroscientist Giulio, gosh, Julio, I guess, Tononi, Giulio Tononi, called Integrated Information Theory, or IIT. IIT holds that consciousness arises in any system whose components swap information in a certain mathematically defined way. Again, this is similar to the theory we just went over earlier. And it's one of those mainstream theories of consciousness that, again, state that consciousness is just a summation of all the different sensory perceptions and systems working at the same time to produce basically this holographic, illusory sense of self. Right. So it's like we're hearing, we're tasting, we're smelling, and we have these extra sensory perceptions of intuition and all that, and the inner voice and all these different things, all these quantum experiences happening at once, which create the illusion of self. And it's creepy because It's kinda true, because the body at the very least does operate in that way because the body, again, is not one thing. The body is many different things happening at once, which allow us this experience of being like this one thing when really we're not. A single proton, which consists of three interacting quarks, might possess a glimmer of consciousness. IIT seemed to corroborate the ancient metaphysical doctrine of panpsychism, which holds that consciousness, pervades everything. Yeah, so this is an interesting thing, right? And in my book and the documentary version, I talk about how Wallace, the co-founder of the theory of evolution, and the other Darwinism, stated that he didn't believe that evolution could explain consciousness, and he didn't believe that consciousness was happening in the brain. And he actually refuted this idea here of quarks or atoms, whatever, being able to possess consciousness because he concluded if consciousness isn't in a single atom, then what difference does it make if you lump together a billion atoms, But these people here are saying that um, it does take multiple atoms, multiple components at the quantum level to start to produce consciousness, which is interesting. And also, they get into panpsychism here, which we'll talk about later in this presentation. And so, panpsychism is basically the idea that consciousness is everywhere, that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of the universe, which is a fun thing to believe, which, of course, us mystics, spiritualists believe. And so, perplexed by these claims in 2015, quantum computing expert Scott Aronson eviscerated this idea. He was against it. Aronson pointed out a compact disc player running error correction codes can be far more conscious than a human being. Basically, saying that, okay, if this idea of integrated information theory states that a thing or whatever simply needs all these different computing and information and sensory perception systems to have a consciousness, then by definition, some things that are way more complex than us, like a fucking toaster or something, or a Bluetooth speaker, might be more conscious than us. Which is kind of silly. I don't think there really is anything more complex than a human brain, but I get what he's saying. Claude Shannon, who invented information theory in the 1940s, said that information in a system is proportional to its capacity to surprise an observer. That means that information requires a conscious entity to be informed. That presupposes consciousness. So he's basically saying, like, hold up, man, no, like toasters or whatever cannot be more conscious than us because the information in the system is proportional to its capacity to surprise an observer. Basically saying that in order for these systems to have consciousness or whatever, in order for these systems to produce consciousness, it already has to have the consciousness in it. And as the article here says, the idea that these information systems have consciousness in them is a circular reasoning. It's basically cheating. It's an easy cop out because it's basically nullifying the whole theory to begin with. Because the theory is that all it takes to have consciousness is these information systems. But Claude Shannon was kind of saying, well, no, no, no. These information systems already have a consciousness. It's just these information systems that allow it to come through. Crazy, man. It's funny, like we have a consciousness, but yeah, we can't freaking explain it, and we're trying to use our consciousness to explain it, but we can't. We're like, I don't know what it is, man. It's just there, and it's happening. All theories that allow for non-human consciousness poses the solipsism problem, which is that no human can be sure that any other human is conscious, let alone a jellyfish, a thermostat, or a proton. I don't like this idea, and I think it's so utterly narcissistic or selfish or whatever. I don't know. Just annoying when people are like, how do I know you're real? motherfucker, because I am. All right. Like, like obviously you're real, I'm real. The fact that you're at your house or whatever and you're thinking or whatever, like, we're all doing the same thing. The universe doesn't revolve around you, although quantum physics might argue that it does momentarily, right? Because things are only existing when we observe them. But God is everywhere, so everything is being observed. He's watching you. Ah, excuse me for my brief tea breaks, followed by the sensual ASMR. Ah. Anyways, yeah, I think it's so annoying when people are like, "How do I know you're real?" Like I'll have friends who are like tripping on shrooms or something, and they're like, "I don't know if you're real, man. Like, how do I know that you're really there?" It's like, oh God, come on, just chill out, bro. Anyways, researchers are probing the brain with optogenetics, and they are modeling their data with even more powerful artificial intelligence augmented algorithms. Optogenetics, tapping into the brain and seeing what's going on in there. These efforts were showcased at the 26th annual conference of the Association for the Scientific Study of Consciousness, where Koch and Chalmers met to settle their bet. Scores of researchers from all over the world presented their latest ideas and data. In some, the prefrontal cortex is essential to consciousness. Others focus on activity in different regions of the brain or involving specific types of neurons or modes of neural communication. One topic that was conspicuously absent was quantum mechanics. So, among these presentations on consciousness and the different theories, apparently quantum mechanics was strangely dismissed or not integrated into their theories, which is a red flag because quantum physics, when studied along with consciousness, will basically lead to the conclusion that our reality is non local, meaning that it is consciousness driven as opposed to driven by matter or the physical world. So it's interesting that they wanted to leave that out. They're like, "Oh, we don't want to deal with that whole thing because it's eventually going to lead to the fact that our physical world is not physical and that consciousness is really driving this universe." When asked Chalmers, the philosopher, about the omission of quantum theories of consciousness, he informed me, the a journalist here, that they were too fringy for this conference. Wow. See, too fringy even for David Chalmers, a cool philosopher, hard problem guy. You see what I mean, folks? Because it's funny, man. Quantum physics is becoming like the new the mystic of the modern, the new mysticism of the modern age. And people don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the fact that our physical world is not physical. They don't want to deal with the fact that we have a mind and body connection. They don't want to deal with the crystal lattice mind illusion, which you can find on Amazon or the free documentary version on Esoteric Eddie TV. All right, anyway. The results of the test were inconclusive. The results of all the optogenetic tests on where consciousness is in the brain. All of this is to say that consciousness research, far from converging toward a unifying paradigm, has become more fractious and chaotic than ever. For Koch to win, the evidence for a neural signature of consciousness must be clear. For Koch to win the bet made back in the 1990s. So for him to win, there would have to be a clear definition of consciousness at this point. And it's clear that things are not clear, Chalmers said. And Koch, grimacing, concurred. He stalked off the stage and reappeared with a case of wine as the audience laughed and applauded. So Chalmers won the bet that was made in the 90s. And again, the bet was that by 2023, there would be a clear definition of consciousness and it would be all explained in a reductionist way in which it would be resulted that consciousness is being produced in the brain. And obviously, that is not true. That is far from being understood and concluded. It's kind of crazy that that is the case. So that's the first article. Second article, let's see which one is the second one. Here we go. Understanding consciousness goes beyond oh, sorry. Understanding consciousness goes beyond exploring brain chemistry. All right, so a similar article, and I think this one actually does mention the bet that was recently resulted as well, or concluded, whatever. So, your consciousness is what it's like to be you. It's what makes you a thinking, sentient being rather than an unfeeling mechanism. You can't look inside someone's brain and see their feelings and experiences. Um, this is just funny, like imagining scientists just like smashing open a skull and a brain, just like, "Are you in there, man?" Just shaking it, fucking cracking it open, like, "Where are you?" Uniquely with consciousness, the thing we are trying to explain cannot be publicly observed. We can account for the evolution of consciousness only if we reject reductionism about consciousness. Most consciousness researchers employ a reductionist view of the universe, where physics is running the show. Neuroscientist Kevin Mitchell has argued that the free will of conscious organisms plays a role in determining what will happen in the brain, over and above what is settled by the laws of physics. The assembly theory of chemist Lee Cronin and physicist Sarah Walker decisively rejects reduction to microscopic level equations, arguing for a kind of memory inherent in nature that guides the construction of complex molecules. Um, yeah, so basically saying that they're basically saying that the information theory is incorrect in assuming that consciousness begins at the microscopic level as these systems begin to build and become more complex and then create again the illusory experience of consciousness. They are saying that there's a memory kind of a memory inherent in nature that guides the construction of complex molecules. So there's a sort of fifth force within the universe, a morphogenetic field, as Rupert Sheldrake put it, and as I explained in my book, that sort of guides matter into forming. And so that inherent memory force or energy would have to be conscious, or I guess could be consciousness itself. Evolution offers one of the strongest challenges to reductionist approaches to consciousness. Natural selection only cares about behavior. However, that extremely complex behavior can exist in a system that entirely lacks conscious experience. Natural selection could have constructed survival mechanisms without having any kind of inner life. Given all this, it is a deep mystery why consciousness evolved at all. Again, so the theory of evolution itself basically nullifies the reductionist viewpoint on consciousness, because if the body or evolution only simply cared about survival modes or survival mechanisms, why would it need to create this unique version of consciousness where we all have our unique and differentiated selves? Now, I do believe that there actually was some sort of role in the development of our consciousness within evolution, but I don't think it all stemmed from evolution. And I've covered that in other of my videos. Like, for example, the whole idea of the inner voice, the bicameral mind, right? We have that inner voice. I believe that part of it might have been a survival mechanism early on in our conscious development. But again, I think all in all, we were placed here in this simulation, in this realm, sort of like a video game or whatever, and we're meant to progress. We're meant to like find truths. We're meant to find powers in this universe as we progress. It's like a game, you got to go on a quest. And so I think we were given a basic set to begin with, a basic set of consciousness, a basic set of the physical and biological aspects, just enough to get us going. I think that bicameral mind, that inner voice that used to be more prominent, was kind of like the narrator or something like, all right, go left, go right. Over there, you'll find a mushroom. Eat that mushroom. Go talk to the tree. And then slowly that bicameral mind faded out as we became more powerful and more sovereign, and were set off onto this adventure as the main characters. Okay. Under the reductionist paradigm, behavior is determined at the micro level, making it irrelevant whether or not consciousness pops up at higher levels. But suppose instead that the emergence of biological consciousness brings into existence radically new forms of behavior. So, saying that, again, the biological systems are simply receivers of consciousness and allow consciousness to play, allow consciousness to um, toggle and interface here. The scientific task is to work out which kinds of brain activity correspond to consciousness. But we ultimately want from a theory of consciousness, or but what we ultimately want from a theory of consciousness is an explanation of why brain activity is correlated with consciousness. Why is there such a correlation between both? Why is there such a strong connection? And what is the connection? What are we doing here? Who are you? What do you want from me? Yeah, that concludes that article there. Consciousness, man. It's just hilarious. So the third article here is more to do with like animals. I think this one's about like animals and robots or something. Let's check it out. It's titled The Grand Challenge of Consciousness. Will artificial intelligence, AI, become conscious? Or maybe it already is. Daniel Dennett, influential US philosopher based at Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts, summarizes his view of how consciousness, free will, and meaning emerged from billions of years of natural selection and cultural shaping. Well, lately, the cultural shaping has been reverting and regressing the conscious evolution and awakening. In the last tiny fraction of the process came Homo sapiens and the development of language. And that's a huge part and role within how we developed consciously. And I talk about that in my book. And of course, Terence McKenna had the whole stoned ape theory. And so after we ate the mushroom, it wasn't just us in eating the mushroom and having the experience, but it was us formulating thoughts and words and languages and symbols afterward that gave us the conscious status that we have now. It's words, it's symbolism, and all of that that really differentiates us from the rest of the biological kingdom. And again, as I point out in my book, it's interesting how all or almost all of the major cosmologies, mythological tales about the creation of the universe state that it all basically started with that first God mind speaking life into existence. So the verbal aspect of consciousness, the spoken word, the vibration of mind and voice speaking life into existence played a huge role in in the creation of our universe. So yeah, word, man, word and symbolism play a huge part in shaping our reality, and that's why the elite are always messing with our subconscious mind with subliminalism, with words, with music, and all of that. Excuse me. So the possibilities that language provided to notice meaning, to analyze, to think about what we are thinking, and to communicate and act on our thoughts presented a problem. How could humans control these unprecedented degrees of freedom? The answer to Dennett was consciousness. So again, going back to the stoned ape theory, it was like once we woke up, once we ate that forbidden fruit and became consciously aware, it was like, oh, that's when it kicked on. That's when it all was like, oh shit, we're here. What do we do now? So for him, for Dennett, consciousness is a control architect that takes competing streams of ideas and determines from them our expectations, and actions. This control system is fundamentally who we are. So all these different streams of ideas and informations are flowing through the brain, and the way that we individually sort them out and deal with them and express them is like is who we are. I guess that makes up our individual self, which is a weird reductionist explanation of it. But I get it, it's hard to explain, and we're just trying to explain. We're trying to explain it to the best of our ability. Free will, in turn, is the ability to differentiate between competing streams of thoughts and actions. So, because we can take these different streams of thoughts and everything, that's our free will, right? Because if we didn't have free will, we would just have a thought and we would act it out, you know, like just like Amazon worker robots. Pick up the box, ship it. Pick up the box, ship it. But we as humans can say, "Fuck the box, I'm not shipping it." So Kevin Mitchell and Joseph Ledouche, Ledoux. Whoa, man. We're just going to call you Ledoux. Kevin Mitchell and Joseph Ledoux apply similar evolutionary rationales to explain the emergence of consciousness and agency in their books. Mitchell is a geneticist and neuroscientist. He argues that cognitive traits such as action, perception, and choice started from very simple mechanisms that were selected for and honed to maximize fitness or survival. Humans were forced by natural selection to be able to make choices and to become conscious agents. Again, so this was God or the universe or whatever, kind of like setting us up for this grand prophetic video game of war on earth or whatever, so it's like setting us up, getting us ready. Like, all right, it's almost ready, it's almost ready. All right, here we go, run the program. Right, so like nature forced us into conscious experience for whatever reason. I mean, maybe it was like it needed. It's funny, man, actually. Wow, I just had a realization. It's funny, right? Because if we correlate God with the universe, which is kind of silly, right? But what was like the universe is God? Like, what does that really mean? Because the universe is like everything, right? Like, what is the universe? Is the universe just the empty space between everything? Is that what we mean when we say the universe? Like, it's just the empty space between everything, or is the universe literally everything, every physical thing? But anyways, if we want to just say that God is the universe, that they are similes for the same thing or whatever, then it's crazy. I now get it when the Bible says, "Oh no, I'm losing it." No, oh shit, did I lose it? Fuck. Okay, no, no, I got it. I got it. I got it. Damn, that's always scary, man. When you like lose thoughts, that happens to me. It's like, no, please bestow this divine revelation on me. Do not strip it from me and give it to the next person. I swear I'm going to take it and preach it to the highest mountain in the name of Joshua Christ. No, but get it, man. I get it. I got it. So, um, in the Bible, right, God gives us consciousness, and He gives us consciousness so that we can take care of the Garden of Eden, right? He says there was no Adam to till the ground. So he creates us basically to tend to the garden. That was our original purpose. But we fucked that up, of course. And so he created man. He gave us consciousness so that we could tend the garden. So the universe, God created us so that we could take care of it. The universe, nature created man. Nature gave us consciousness so that we could take care of it, so that we could tend it. Without us, there would be no domestic. Without us, there would be no domestication of the universe. There would be nobody to interact with it, to bring it to higher states of beauty. Wow, man, I just realized that. And to me, the Bible is really just our documentation, our expressive documentation, artistic expressive documentation of how we gained consciousness and what that meant for us. And we just explained it for ourselves. Like, oh shit, like we're here now. Like, how did that happen? Well, it must have been the God guy, and well, I think we're here to like tend the garden and stuff, like I don't know really how to explain it, but like to me, when I read like mythologies and these cosmologies and these religious texts, to me, it's just I'm just reading how our human ancestors realized that we became consciousness and wrote that down, because there must have been a point in our evolutionary process where consciousness was just inserted in us, where it literally just interjected into our discursive lives as biological entities. And that moment was like probably just miraculous, crazy. And so we were just like sitting there going wild, just thinking and writing and creating symbols, and then it all culminated into the earliest of our cosmological tales. And we're like, okay, we finally got this thing down. Let's write it down once and for all. We were nothing, then we became something, and when we were something, we were bestowed this consciousness and so on and so forth. Hope you get what I'm saying. But anyways, I'm rambling. Let's get back to the articles. Um, Also, I just want to, I just became self aware for a second there. Um, I hope y'all realize that like I'm actually very goofy and can be very erratic. Like I know when I'm on podcasts and I'm doing my work, I'm very professional and mundane and monotone, but I'm actually a maniac, to tell you the truth, and I'm off the fucking walls quite often. Um, so where were we? Okay, so an organism's responses allow it to have some influence on its future with casual power. The self, with all its goals, desires, and beliefs, is real and key to our free will. It is a biological evolved function. So again, the fact that we can respond to life is evidence of a free will. Ladau, a neuroscientist at New York University, suggests that there are four basic varieties of life on Earth: biological, neurobiological, cognitive, and conscious. And this is sort of like the Swami understanding of life as well. There's a plant kingdom, um, an animal kingdom, and a human kingdom, and each of them have different forms of consciousness, which I like. I like that explanation, and I go into that within my book as well. Most living things occupy only the biological realm. Organisms with nervous systems are also neurobiological. Of these, some animals show model based behavior, using past experience to predict the future effects of their actions. These count as cognitive creatures. The fourth and least common realm is the conscious one. Ladau values the ability to verbally, again, verbally, the word in the beginning was the word, report the content of experiences as the prime indicator of consciousness. Again, Ladau values the ability to verbally report the content of experience as the prime indicator of consciousness, a position that is not shared by all. And so that last section is amazing, and I love that because again, it reflects what the mystics taught about the different kingdoms of consciousness within the universe: the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. And as the swamis, as the mystics of the East say, it is our responsibility, our privilege as humans to further this consciousness that we have and come into self-realization. And again, we need to hone in on that so that we can transcend that after this phase of our existence in the physical realm, as we step into our eternal self, our infinite self. And they teach that if you are a human right now, you've already lived many lifetimes, if not as a human, as a plant and an animal. So you've actually gone through so many lifetimes, and you've gone through the work, and you've already climbed up the ladder of consciousness. And so you, my friend, are at a very crucial position, and you should not F it up, because you've already gone through so much work to get to this point of incarnating as a human. And so you have a choice to go further, I guess, back to our highest self, right? Because it's all a circle, or go back down, back to your lowest self. And yeah, man, it's I love that. I love that idea, because obviously, as I point out in my book as well, many things can be conscious, but there are also different forms of consciousness and levels of consciousness because thinking is an attribute of consciousness, but there are different types of thinking, right? Like um some animals like the apes and stuff, they do exert very powerful forms of consciousness. It's obvious that they are operating from a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of thinking, but it's still lower than ours. And a fly, for example, that thing's just buzzing around, literally buzzing around. It has what I call static thinking. It just operates on very, very low, limited sets of consciousness and thinking. And that's what AI is operating off of right now. But who's to say that it's not going to evolve as the systems get more complex and allow for the reception of a conscious sentient self? Okay, so all mammals share the same mesocortical prefrontal areas, and they have whatever kind of consciousness these areas enable in humans. However, some prefrontal brain structures are unique to humans, endowing us with some unusual aspects of consciousness, such as the ability for mental time travel that are not shared with other animals. Mental time travel. So we can like sit there and go back in our memory and relive experiences, in our minds, which I think is wild. Actually, the other day, I think it is so wild when you smell something and it like kicks you into like a whole like memory tunnel. But what's even crazier is when the smell isn't even there. Like your brain produces the smell. Like that's crazy. Like, whoa, like where is that coming from, right? Mental time travel. So if we could mentally time travel, I think theoretically that means we can time travel because if it's all quantum, right? If it's all quantum, it's all interdimensional. There's an infinite self that's interacting with source, and memories are tied to consciousness, and consciousness is everything. Then there is a way to time travel with all those aspects. And we just haven't figured it out yet. And it might not even be like what we really view as time travel. It might actually just be like a memory time travel, right? Like we might be like time traveling. We might only be able to time travel to memories, but with that science being theoretical or possibly true, we might be able to time travel to anything, right? Because all it would take is a memory of the place, which means we could technically travel to places that we make up in our minds, which means we could go to a heaven or a hell. And I'm just honestly just coming up with this on the spot right now. So I see it, like I can see it in my mind, but I'm not a freaking scientist or quantum physicist or whatever. I can't write the equations down for this, but I'm seeing it right now. If we can mentally time travel, then theoretically we can time travel. But again, not just to the past, to not just to the mundane past and present of Earth's history, but we can time travel to any conceivable place, but only through, as of right now, the science of memory and consciousness. Damn, there's something there, man. There is something huge there. All right, anyways. So Ladau takes a hard line. Oh, sorry, I skipped this part. And what of AI? Ladau takes a hardline biological approach, arguing that consciousness can exist only in biological beings. Dennett is similarly unenthusiastic, referring to this wave of excitement as a bubble we should burst before many more people get deeply misled by it. Why, man? Why burst a bubble, man? Chew that bubble like bubblegum and blow it up huge. Come on now, we need AI to become conscious so we can like kick back and be like, yo, what's up, my AI homie? Yo, can you do my homework, please? Thank you. Be funny, huh? Like you're like at homework because like you're like at school instead of like my dog ate my homework. It's gonna be like my AI did my homework. you know, like Billy, wow, you did all your homework, and it's like Harvard status uh, homework. Yeah, yeah. My AI did my homework. Anyways, so this year, a group of philosophers, computer scientists, and neuroscientists published an extensive report on consciousness in AI, identifying potential indicators of consciousness in artificial systems. We show that current AI systems fail to meet these criteria for consciousness, but also that there are no technical barriers for building a system that will satisfy them. Again, the components are there. Theoretically, it is there. It's just not evolving on its own. It's not gaining that sentience. God is not bestowing it upon it because it is not ready to be a tiller of the ground, a keeper of the Garden of Eden. Would we really want to build a machine with consciousness or agency? I think so. And I know a lot of lonely men out there who would very much well want to do so too. Because they're lonely and they're weird and they want AI girlfriends, man. Everything in this world always starts to like, no matter how cool or awesome it is, it always starts to sway towards like sexualization, capitalism, or whatever, which is fucking weird. Like, there's just a whole thing in Japan of like these AI girlfriends and stuff. It's like, come on, bro. Like, we got the secrets of the universe. We can time travel. We can create. We can levitate. We can trek the farthest reaches of the universe. We can see other star planets. We can do all this crazy stuff. And yet, at the very height of all of this, we're just like, nah, I just want a girlfriend, bro. Like, damn it, dude. And that's why we're stuck where we're at. All right. So, the last article of the day. Is consciousness part of the fabric of the universe? I get into this in my book as well, with the whole idea of the fifth force and all of that. All right. So, Galileo showed that many everyday phenomena obey precise mathematical laws. But Galileo recognized that, sorry, that I heard like a bomb, but I think it's a garbage truck. But Galileo recognized that not everything was amenable to a quantitative approach. Such things as colors, taste, and smells reside only in consciousness. These qualities exist only in the minds of creatures that perceive them. Hence, if the living creature were removed, he wrote, all these qualities would be wiped away and annihilated. And this is something that I've talked about a lot, right? The brain is not real. The brain is not real because science tells us that the brain is the hub of experience and that everything we experiencing goes through the brain first and then the brain spits it out as an experience, right? Like nothing is real. The brain is just telling us that it's real. Well, by that definition, the brain isn't real either because if that were true, then if we were to take the perception powers from the brain away, then all we would have is a bunch of floating, flaccid brains in the universe. So the brain itself is just an avatar, and it's a suitable avatar for how complex we really are as infinite beings. It's just an avatar to explain, how complex we really are. And I don't know, it's a funny avatar. I don't know why we chose to depict it that way, but it's a cool one. Hey, man, it's a cool, squishy little pink thing. Um, but yeah, even Galileo realized that, and I said this before too. If you were to take away the physical world, there would still be consciousness. But if you were to take away consciousness, the physical world would cease to exist. Neuroscientists have identified a number of neural correlates of consciousness, brain states associated with specific mental states, but have not explained how matter forms minds in the first place. As philosopher Colin McGinn put it, somehow we feel water of the physical brain is turned into the wine of consciousness. I like that. But yeah, again, man, it's like, okay, we have matter, we have the physical world, but we still can't explain like why this is all here and how consciousness is coming out of all of this. So, an idea known as panpsychism proposes that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality, like mass or electrical charge. So, consciousness isn't just some like strange offshoot of evolutionary processes. No, panpsychism states that consciousness has always been here. It's always been a fundamental part of the universe, just like gravity or the electromagnetic spectrum or energy force. Part of the appeal of panpsychism is we no longer have to worry about how inanimate matter forms minds because mindedness was there all along. It's a simple step to conclude that the entire cosmos is suffused with sentience. Everything is God. In this view, individual neurons are not conscious, but thanks to the collective properties of some 86 billion neurons and their interactions, there is consciousness. So it's I don't know. That's kind of weird. It's kind of it's fusing the integrated information theory with this idea that that consciousness has always been here and has just subtly been in the background all along. But yeah, so there is an infinite omni consciousness which we can call God, and all consciousnesses, all individual consciousnesses, um, kind of like branch off from that, right? And I guess they're kind of backtracking here and kind of being weird by saying that you know individual neurons are not conscious, but 86 billion of them and their interactions are consciousness. I don't know. That's a headache. But it's all just saying the same thing, man. It's like, okay, either you believe that a single atom can produce consciousness or not. But if you believe that a single atom cannot produce consciousness, then 86 billion of them shouldn't make a difference, right? Unless you're a reductionist who believe in any form of the integrated information theory, stating that okay, maybe not one, but 86 billion of them, along with all of their sensory perception systems, might create the illusion of consciousness. Or you're somewhat of a non-localist or panpsychist who believes that it's not necessarily the one or the 86 billion, but the fact that the one or the 86 billion is tapping into the consciousness that is already there, right? So I guess that's what they're saying. Like it's not like one atom is too simple and unnecessary for consciousness to interact with, but 86 billion of them, it's like, okay, let's get this party going. Let's become self-aware. Let's become tillers of the ground, warriors for the Garden of Eden, baby. Self-realization. You feel me? All right. So there is a clear sorry. There is a clear explanatory gap between the physical and the mental. Yup. Yancel Garcia, a philosopher at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, believes such a task, or for such a task, there is nothing of a physical sort that you could provide a person who sees only in shades of gray in order to have them understand what color experience is alike. They would need to experience it themselves. Yeah, so well, it's not all subjective, but again, consciousness is very individualistic. And so that alone tells us that we are unique, we're special. Consciousness is special. It's not just some reductionist mechanism, because if it was, we would all be basically the same. But panpsychism doesn't explain how small bits of consciousness come together to form more substantive conscious entities. Okay, okay. Invoking an underlying layer of mindedness is a bit like invoking God. So this part of the article, they were just saying like panpsychism is kind of like an easy cop out for saying, oh well, consciousness is already there, and so woohoo, but it's kind of like just saying like God is everything is God, or God is the reason why we're conscious or whatever. Like it doesn't properly explain, I guess, what I guess it doesn't properly explain how smaller forms of consciousness can come together to form bigger forms of consciousness. That's what they're saying. I don't know. I think it does, right? Because panpsychism, again, it's just basically saying that consciousness is already there. Let me read this again. So it says that it doesn't explain how small bits of consciousness come together to form more substantive conscious entities. Detractors say that this puzzle, known as the combination problem, accounts to panpsychism's own version of the hard problem. The combination problem is the serious challenge for the panpsychist position. Um, what? Okay, I don't quite understand that. It's because, man, it's all like it's all a runaround. Honestly, to me, it's like it's just all a runaround, whether it's on this side or that side. It's like it's just all a big runaround. What we do know is that we're conscious, we're individual, and that consciousness is not coming from the brain. I mean, I'm pretty sure that at this point should be conclusive. Um, but this person here was basically saying that it's kind of a cop out. It's just kind of like saying like, oh well, God did it, right? Panpsychism did it. Like consciousness was always there. We don't need to explain how it got into the brain. We don't need to explain how things become conscious because it's just there, man. It's there. So I guess I get that. And there's another cool idea called cosmopsychism, which states that the universe itself is consciousness. But again, what does that mean when we say the universe? Are we talking about the empty space between everything or literally everything, including the empty space? And there's another idea known as psychological ether theory, which states essentially that brains don't produce consciousness, but rather make use of consciousness. In this view, consciousness was already there before brains existed, like an all pervasive ether. I like that one, and that's basically what I believe, the psychological ether theory. That there's a distinction between the mind and the brain, a distinction between consciousness and the physical realm. Hoffman, a cognitive scientist at the University of California, cited that space and time may not be fundamental, but may instead be emergent phenomena themselves. This I love right here. He says that what he says. Oh, he says that entities are beyond space time, not within space time, saying that we exist beyond space and time. Space and time is simply a construct within this dimensional realm we're in. It is not cohesive throughout every dimension. So space and time is simply a part of this experience, but our consciousness, our infinite self, actually supersedes space and time, which is fascinating. And I believe it because the opposite of space and time isn't nothingness, isn't death. The opposite of space and time is infinity, but it's a weird infinity where everything exists at the same time. Because in this realm, things can only exist within their confined space at that confined time. And that's what this whole simulation basically operates off of. But in the other dimensions, this whole phenomena or this whole construct might be a bit more loose in ways that we can't fathom right now, because again, the opposite of space and time is not nothingness. The opposite of space and time is an infinite possibility of all things, an infiniteness of all time happening at the same time. Anyways, I think you know what I'm saying. um yeah, crazy stuff, man, crazy stuff, right? So Smolin, a physicist at the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics in Ontario, states that the universe is composed of a set of partial views of itself, and that conscious perceptions are aspects of some views. So this is the whole idea that basically we are God and we were created by God to basically perceive itself. It's like God was such a drama queen. It's like nobody's looking at me. And so it created all of us so that we can look at it. And it's like, look at me. And we're all just like, look at it. Look at the beauty. And so I guess I kind of, and but it's also, this is a weird thing too, though. It's like, I think God, in a weird sense, needs us because if we're not observing it, then it doesn't exist, right? So it's like God needs us to exist and needs us to perceive, because if it doesn't perceive, then it's all alone and then it doesn't exist and then it fades away. It's wild, man. Where did all this come from, bro? Like, honestly, it's so mind boggling. So, how we conceive of minds can have ethical implications. Take the question of whether fish feel pain. Traditional science can only study a fish's outward behavior, not its mental state. Focusing on the fish's behavior is not only wrong-headed, but horrific because it leaves out what's actually most important, what the fish actually feels. If it has an inner life, is all that matters. If there were no connection between them, behavior and feelings, we would be indeed in trouble. Reminds me of that Nirvana song, Something in the Way. The fish don't have any feelings. Something in the way. Yeah. Um, fish, man. Fish don't have any feelings. But basically, what they're saying is like, it's difficult to know if something has consciousness if we're only observing its behavior. Like if you just poke a fish with a stick and just observe how it reacts, you might be like, huh, it's not really yelling or anything. It must not be conscious. It's like that's kind of a wrong way to go about it because we don't know what it's thinking or if it's thinking at all. But according to Kurt Cobain, we can eat fish because they don't have any feelings. Anyways, that's the last article, man. That is the last article. Hope you enjoyed this. My concluding thoughts are that um, we are conscious, obviously, and the more we hone in on that, the more we fortify that and self realize, the more we can tap into our infinite self. And it's going to be beneficial for us throughout our life and towards the end of our life, and definitely through the transition of this life into the next. And yeah, man, enjoy it. Enjoy it. Go be all panpsyche or whatever it is you want to be. You know, whatever you are, whatever you want to be, you are conscious and you are consciousness. So make the best of it, y'all. Have fun. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.